The metal chair felt cold against Kithvar's scaled skin. His wrists burned where the energy shackles held him tight. The room was small and white, with bright lights that hurt his yellow eyes. Everything smelled like chemicals and fear. 3 humans sat across from him at a metal table. They looked so small and weak compared to his kind. Kithvar was 7 feet tall with thick green scales and sharp teeth. These humans were just soft pink creatures with tiny eyes and no claws. How had they captured him? The human in the middle wore a dark blue uniform with silver bars on his chest. His black hair was cut short and his dark eyes stayed focused on Kithvar's face. This one seemed to be their leader. "I am Captain Do-hyun of the human fleet ship Incheon's Pride," the man said. His voice was calm and steady. "You are Commander Kithvar of the Velthari 3rd Battle Group, is that correct?" Kithvar made a hissing sound through his teeth. "I will tell you nothing, weak mammal." The human woman to Do-hyun's left smiled, but it was not a kind smile. She had long black hair pulled back tight and wore a gray uniform. Her name tag read Hye-jin. She opened a small computer and began typing. "Your ship records say otherwise," Hye-jin said. "We know exactly who you are. We know your family name, your homeworld, even your favorite food." She looked up at him. "Roasted fish from the warm seas of Veltar Prime, correct?" Kithvar's eyes went wide. How could they know such things? The Velthari had been fighting humans for 3 years now. His people were winning. They were stronger, faster, and had better weapons. These mammals should not know anything about Velthari culture. The 3rd human was a large man with scars on his hands. He wore green clothes with many pockets. His name was Taemin, and he looked like he had been in many fights. He did not speak, but his eyes never left Kithvar. "Let me tell you why you are here," Do-hyun continued. "Your battle group attacked our colony on New Seoul. You killed many innocent people. Then something went wrong for you, didn't it?" Kithvar remembered that battle. It should have been easy. The human colony had few defenses and only a small guard force. His ships had powerful plasma weapons and energy shields. The attack started well. But then the humans had done something strange. Instead of fighting back in the normal way, they had disappeared. One moment they were shooting at Velthari soldiers, and the next moment they were gone. Not dead, not running away, just gone. "We don't know what tricks you used," Kithvar said, "but it will not help you." "The Velthari are strong?" "We will crush your weak species like insects." Hye-jin touched her computer screen. The wall behind her lit up with moving pictures. Kithvar saw images from the battle on New Seoul. He watched his own soldiers land on the human world and begin their attack. At first, everything looked normal. Velthari warriors with their plasma rifles were pushing back human defenders. The humans were shooting back with their simple bullet weapons, but they were losing ground fast. Then the pictures changed. Kithvar saw his soldiers looking confused. They were standing in empty streets calling to each other. Where had all the humans gone? "Your soldiers spent 6 hours looking for an enemy that was no longer there," Do-hyun said. But the humans didn't leave the planet. They were still there, watching, waiting. More pictures showed Velthari search teams moving through buildings. The teams were nervous, looking over their shoulders. Something was wrong, but they could not figure out what. "Then your people started to disappear too," Hye-jin added. The wall showed a Velthari patrol walking down a street. There were 5 soldiers in the group. The camera followed them as they moved between buildings. One soldier fell behind the others just for a moment. When the camera looked back, he was gone. The other 4 soldiers did not even notice until they reached the end of the street. Kithvar felt his throat go dry. He remembered getting the reports from his ground commander. Soldiers were vanishing without any sign of a fight. No bodies, no blood, no damaged equipment. They just disappeared. "Your commander called for help," Do-hyun continued. "You sent down more troops. What happened to them?" The pictures on the wall showed larger groups of Velthari soldiers. They moved carefully, weapons ready, staying close together. But it did not matter. One by one they vanished when no one was looking directly at them. "Impossible," Kithvar whispered. "Humans are not capable of such things. You are loud and clumsy. You cannot move without making noise." Taemin spoke for the first time. His voice was rough, like stones grinding together. "You don't know humans very well, do you?" More images appeared on the wall. These showed the final hours of the battle. Kithvar's remaining ground forces had gathered in the center of the colony's main city. They formed a defensive circle, all facing outward, watching for any sign of the enemy, but the humans were already inside the circle. The wall showed chaos. Velthari soldiers were shooting at shadows at each other at nothing. Some were screaming words that meant ghost and demon in their language. Within an hour, the entire force had either disappeared or gone insane with fear. You ordered your ships to burn the colony from space, Haijin said. You destroyed your own soldiers rather than face what the humans had become. Kithvar's claws dug into the metal chair. He did not want to remember giving that order. But what choice did he have? His warriors were strong and brave, but they were fighting something that should not exist. What did you do to them? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Do-hyun leaned forward. We learned. The captain stood up and walked to the wall of pictures. He touched the screen and the images changed again. Now they showed human soldiers, but something was different about them. They moved too quietly, too smoothly. Their eyes had a strange look, like predators hunting in the dark. The war has been going on for 3 years, Do-hyun said. In that time you have taught us many things about your people. How you think, how you fight, what you fear. He turned to look at Kithvar. We are very good students. Kithvar stared at the humans on the screen. They did not look like the same species that had been losing battles just months ago. These humans looked dangerous in a way that made his scales crawl with fear. This is just the beginning, Hyejin said softly. We have so much more to show you. The lights in the room dimmed slightly and new pictures began to appear on the wall. Kithvar did not want to watch, but he could not look away. Whatever these humans had learned about his people, he had a feeling it was going to be much worse than he imagined. Hyejin touched her computer again, and the wall filled with star maps and battle records. Kithvar recognized the systems. These were from the early days of the war when everything had been so simple. Let's start from the beginning, she said. 3 years ago, when your people first found us, the images showed Velthari warships appearing near human colonies. They were beautiful ships, sleek and silver, with energy weapons that could cut through human defenses like paper. Kithvar remembered feeling proud as he watched human settlements burn. Your people were so confident then, Do-hyun observed. You sent messages to our leaders demanding surrender. You called us primitive mammals and promised to enslave our entire species. Kithvar lifted his scaled chin. Because it was true. Humans had no chance against the might of the Velthari Empire. Your weapons were weak. Your ships were slow. You fought without honor or strategy. We did lose many battles at first, Hyejin agreed. The wall showed burning human cities and destroyed space stations. Colony after colony fell to your forces. Millions of humans died in the first year alone. Taemin's scarred hands closed into fists on the table. I was there for some of those battles. Lost a lot of good friends. The pictures changed to show Velthari ground forces marching through human cities. They moved in perfect formation, their plasma rifles glowing blue. Human soldiers tried to fight back, but their bullets bounced off Velthari energy shields like raindrops. Your species seemed unstoppable, Do-hyun said. But then something started to change. Small things at first. Do you remember the Battle of Titan Base? Kithvar did remember. It had been one of his victories, or so he thought. The human base had fallen quickly, but something had felt wrong about the whole fight. The humans fought differently there, he said slowly. They did not try to hold their positions. They kept moving, always moving. The wall showed recordings from that battle. Human soldiers were running through corridors and ducking behind cover, but they were not running away. They were leading Velthari troops deeper into the base, splitting them up into smaller groups. We were learning your tactics, Hyejin explained. Every battle taught us more about how your people think and fight. We started to notice patterns. More images appeared. These showed charts and graphs with Velthari names and numbers. Kithvar saw tactical analyses written in human languages, breaking down every aspect of Velthari military behavior. You always attack in groups of 12, Do-hyun said. Your warriors never retreat once they start fighting, even when they should. You prefer high ground and open spaces. You communicate using hand signals when you want to be quiet. He smiled coldly. We learned all of this by watching you win. Kithvar felt uncomfortable. These humans had been studying his people like scientists studying insects. But that was impossible. Velthari were the superior race. They were the ones who should be studying primitive mammals, not the other way around. The real change started about 18 months ago, Hyejin continued. After the disaster at Mining Station 7, the wall showed a small human outpost built into an asteroid. It looked like an easy target. Just a few buildings and maybe 50 humans. Kithvar remembered sending a single battle group to capture it. Your people landed and began their attack, Do-hyun said. But when they got inside the station, they found something unexpected. The images showed Velthari soldiers moving through empty corridors. The humans had left equipment behind, personal belongings, even half-eaten meals. But there were no people anywhere. At first, your troops thought the humans had evacuated, Hyejin said. But then they found the messages. The wall displayed recordings of Velthari soldiers finding human computer terminals. The screen showed text in the Velthari language. Perfect. Velthari writing that said things like, "We know you are afraid of being alone," and "Your weakness is your pack instinct." Kithvar's yellow eyes went wide. "Impossible. Humans cannot write in our language, Adium, we learned," Taimin said simply. The pictures continued. They showed Velthari soldiers getting nervous as they read more messages. The humans had somehow learned about Velthari psychology, their deepest fears and instincts. The messages were designed to make the soldiers uncomfortable, to make them doubt themselves. "Then your people started hearing sounds," Do-hyun said. The recordings showed Velthari warriors stopping and looking around. They could hear movement in the walls, voices speaking their language, footsteps that matched their own. But when they investigated, they found nothing. "Ghosts," whispered Kithvar. He remembered the reports from his soldiers. They had talked about invisible enemies and voices from nowhere. He had thought they were going insane. "Not ghosts," Hyejin corrected. "Just humans who had learned how to think like Velthari. We studied your people so carefully that we could predict exactly what would frighten you most." The wall showed a human man in a dark uniform. He had short gray hair and calm eyes. His name tag read Sung-ho. He was standing in front of a large computer screen covered in Velthari, symbols and behavioral charts. "Engineer Sung-ho spent 2 years learning everything about your species," Do-hyun explained. He interviewed every human who had encountered Velthari forces. He analyzed every battle recording, every communication we captured, every piece of equipment you left behind. The images showed Sung-ho working with teams of human scientists and soldiers. They were building something. Devices that could copy Velthari sounds. Weapons that fired in the same patterns as Velthari plasma rifles. Even fake Velthari armor. Sung-ho called it the Phantom Protocol, Hyejin said. The idea was simple. If we couldn't beat you with superior technology, we would beat you by becoming the thing you feared most. "What do the Velthari fear most?" Kithvar asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Taimon's scarred face showed a grin that had no warmth in it. "Being hunted." The wall displayed images from Velthari history and culture. It showed ancient stories about great predators that hunted Kithvar's ancestors in the dark forests of their homeworld. The Velthari had always been the hunters, the strong ones who conquered weaker species. The idea of being prey was their deepest nightmare. "So we became your nightmare," Do-hyun said. New pictures appeared, showing human soldiers training in ways that Kithvar had never seen before. They were learning to move without sound, to hide in places that seemed impossible, to appear and disappear like spirits. But most disturbing of all, they were learning to think like Velthari. "We studied your pack behavior," Hyejin explained. "How you communicate, how you make decisions, how you react to stress. Then we used that knowledge against you." The recordings showed the results. Human soldiers would attack Velthari forces and then vanish, but they would leave behind evidence that they had been there. A plasma rifle fired in a specific pattern, a message written in perfect Velthari script, sounds that mimicked Velthari battle cries. "Your people started to think they were fighting other Velthari," Do-hyun said. "They became paranoid, suspicious of their own comrades. They stopped trusting their senses." Kithvar watched in horror as the images showed his proud warriors beginning to break down. Velthari soldiers were jumping at shadows, shooting at their own troops, refusing to enter dark areas. The humans had found their psychological weak points and attacked them like a disease. "But we were just getting started," Hyejin said softly. The real lessons were still to come. The wall went dark for a moment, then filled with star charts showing recent battles. Kithvar recognized some of the systems. Places where entire Velthari fleets had simply vanished without sending any distress signals. "Would you like to see what happened to them?" Do-hyun asked. Kithvar did not want to see, but he knew he had no choice. These humans were going to show him exactly how his people had been defeated, and he suspected it was going to be worse than anything he could imagine. Do-hyun walked to the wall and placed his hand on the screen. The images changed to show a massive space station floating between 2 moons. Kithvar recognized it immediately. Kepler Station, one of the largest human military bases in this sector. 6 months ago, your people launched their biggest attack against us, Do-hyun said. 5 battle groups, over 200 ships, 50,000 warriors. Your commanders called it the final strike that would end the war. Kithvar remembered that day. The Velthari High Command had been confident that this attack would crush the human resistance once and for all. They had gathered their best ships and their most experienced fighters. We were not ready, he said quietly. The humans should have been destroyed in hours. But we weren't, Heejin replied. Because by then we had learned to fight like you. The wall showed the beginning of the battle. Velthari ships came out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their plasma cannons charging for the attack. The human station looked tiny compared to the alien fleet, but something was wrong with the picture. Kithvar squinted at the images, trying to figure out what bothered him. Then he saw it. The human ships were moving in Velthari battle patterns. They were using formations that only his people should know. Colonel Jinwoo commanded our forces that day, Do-hyun continued. A new image appeared showing a human officer with short black hair and cold eyes. He had spent 8 months studying every Velthari battle recording we could find. He knew your tactics better than some of your own commanders. The battle recordings played on the wall. Kithvar watched as human ships moved like Velthari vessels, using the same strategies and formations that had won dozens of victories for the Empire. But the humans were doing it better, cleaner, with improvements that made the tactics more deadly. Impossible, Kithvar whispered. Those are sacred battle forms passed down through generations of Velthari warriors. No outsider could learn them. Lieutenant So Young helped with that, Hyejin said. Another image appeared showing a young human woman in a pilot's uniform. She flew captured Velthari fighters for months, learning how they handle, how they turn, how they think. She taught our pilots to fly like your people. The recordings showed human fighters moving with the deadly grace that Kithvar associated with his own species. They twisted and rolled through space in patterns that seemed impossible for human reflexes. But they were not just copying Velthari movements, they were perfecting them. Your attack formations were good, Taemin observed, but they had weaknesses. Blind spots that your pilots had learned to ignore because they always fought weaker enemies. We found those blind spots. The wall showed the moment when the battle turned. The Velthari fleet had been pressing their attack, confident in their superior numbers and firepower. Then human ships began appearing in places where they should not be able to go. Inside the Velthari formation, behind their main battle line, even within the protective screens around their command vessels. How? Kithvar asked, his voice cracking. We learned from our defeats, Do-hyun explained. Every time your people destroyed one of our ships, we studied the wreckage. Every time you won a battle, we analyzed what you did. We turned your victories into our education. The images showed human engineers working on captured Velthari equipment. They were not just studying it, they were improving it, taking alien technology and making it work better than the original designers had intended. Dr. Mi-young was very helpful with this. Hyejin added. A new face appeared on the wall, an older human woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes. She studied Velthari psychology and culture. She helped us understand not just how you fight, but why you fight the way you do. The wall displayed charts and diagrams showing Velthari social structures and behavioral patterns. Kithvar saw his own species laid out like a scientific specimen, every instinct and reaction mapped and categorized. Your people value strength above all else, Dr. Mi-young's recorded voice said from speakers in the room. You respect power and despise weakness. You fight in hierarchies with clear leaders and followers. These traits make you excellent warriors, but they also make you predictable. Kithvar felt sick. These humans had dissected his entire culture, learning its secrets and turning them into weapons. The Battle of Kepler Station lasted 14 hours, Do-hyun continued. In that time we did not just defeat your fleet. We broke it. The recording showed the final hours of the battle. Velthari ships were not just being destroyed. They were being systematically hunted down by human forces that seemed to know exactly where they would try to run, exactly what tactics they would use to escape. Your commanders tried every strategy they knew, Hyejin said. Flanking maneuvers, feint attacks, desperate charges. We countered all of them because we had learned to think like Velthari tactical officers. But the worst part was still coming. The wall showed Velthari survivors being rescued by their own ships, only to find human soldiers waiting for them aboard their rescue vessels. The humans were not just wearing Velthari armor. They were speaking the language perfectly, using the right gestures and cultural signals. How long? Kithvar asked weakly. How long what? Do-hyun replied. How long were your people on our ships? The human captain smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Long enough. The images showed human infiltrators who had been living among Velthari crews for weeks or even months. They had been gathering intelligence, sabotaging equipment, and preparing for the moment when they would strike from within. We call them mirror soldiers, Taimin explained. Humans who learned to be more Velthari than the Velthari themselves. Kithvar watched recordings of these mirror soldiers in action. They moved like his people, fought like his people, even thought like his people, but they were something else underneath. Something that used Velthari nature as a disguise while serving human goals. The survivors of Kepler Station spread stories throughout your empire, Hyojin said. Stories about humans who could become Velthari, who could infiltrate any ship or base, who could turn your own people against each other. The wall showed intelligence reports from other Velthari fleets. Ship crews were becoming paranoid, suspicious of their own comrades. Medical officers were demanding genetic tests to prove that soldiers were really Velthari. Trust was breaking down throughout the Empire's military. But that was just the beginning, Do-hyun said. Once we learned to become you, we realized we could become something better than you. New images appeared showing human soldiers who had taken Velthari tactics and improved them. They moved with alien precision but human creativity. They used Velthari weapons with human innovation. They fought with Velthari discipline but human adaptability. Your people had been the same for thousands of years, Dr. Mi-young's voice continued. The same tactics, the same strategies, the same cultural patterns. You were strong, but you were also static. We took what made you strong and added what makes us human. The ability to change, to grow, to become something new. Kithvar stared at the recordings of these hybrid warriors. They were neither fully human nor attempting to be Velthari. They were something in between, something that combined the best of both species while keeping the weaknesses of neither. We didn't just learn from you, Hyojin said quietly. We evolved because of you. The wall went dark, leaving Kithvar alone with his thoughts. The humans across from him sat in silence, letting him absorb what he had seen. His proud warrior race, the conquerors of a dozen worlds, had been defeated by mammals who learned to out-Velthari the Velthari themselves. There's more, Do-hyun said finally. Much more. But first I need to know, are you beginning to understand what your people are really fighting? Kithvar looked at the three humans sitting across from him. They seemed so small and harmless, but he now knew that appearances meant nothing. These creatures had taken his people's greatest strengths and turned them into weaknesses. They had learned to wear his culture like a mask while serving their own mysterious purposes. What are you? He whispered. Do-hyun leaned forward. We're what you made us. The room grew colder as Hyojin opened a new file on her computer. The wall lit up with star charts showing the Velthari home system. Kithvar's breath caught in his throat. These were classified military maps that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. Operation Broken Mirror began 2 months ago, she said. After we had learned everything we needed to know about your people. The images showed a massive Velthari fleet gathered around their home worlds. Over 1,000 ships, the entire remaining strength of the Empire. Kithvar recognized many of the vessels. His own brother commanded one of those battle cruisers. Your high command pulled back all forces to protect the core worlds, Do-hyun explained. They thought if they could make a stand there, they could still win the war. A new face appeared on the wall, a human man with sharp features and calculating eyes. His uniform was different from the others, with strange markings that Kithvar had never seen before. Commander Woo-jin led the operation, Hyojin continued, but he didn't command ships or soldiers. He commanded something much more dangerous, ideas. Kithvar did not understand. Ideas cannot fight battles. They cannot destroy ships or conquer worlds, can't they? Taimin asked with a cold smile. The wall showed recordings from inside Velthari ships. Kithvar watched his own people going about their daily routines, eating, sleeping, maintaining their weapons, preparing for battles that would never come. Everything looked normal at first, but then he began to notice small things. A warrior would speak to his commander, and the commander would frown and look suspicious. A technician would report strange readings from the ship's computers. Security officers would find equipment that had been moved while no one was watching. We didn't attack your fleet with weapons, Do-hyun said. We attacked it with paranoia. The recordings showed Velthari crews becoming increasingly nervous and distrustful. Reports were spreading through the fleet about possible infiltrators, about humans who could perfectly disguise themselves as aliens, about sabotage and betrayal. But there were no human infiltrators in the home fleet. Kithvar protested. The High Command checked everyone. Genetic scans, psychological profiles, memory tests. Every warrior was confirmed to be pure Velthari. You're right, Hyejin agreed. There were no human infiltrators. But your people didn't know that. New images appeared showing a human woman in a science uniform. She had long black hair and wore thick glasses. Her name tag read Yunsu. Specialist Yunsu spent 18 months living with captured Velthari prisoners, Do-hyun explained. Not interrogating them or studying them from the outside, but actually living as one of them. She learned your language so perfectly that she could speak like someone from any region of your empire. She learned your customs, your jokes, your fears, your dreams. The wall showed recordings of Yunsu living in a Velthari prison camp. She had been surgically altered to look like a member of Kithvar's species. Scales, claws, even the right eye color. For months she had lived and worked alongside captured aliens, learning everything about their culture. She wasn't alone, Hyejin added. We had 12 specialists like her, each one becoming expert in different aspects of Velthari society. Kithvar watched in horror as the recording showed more humans who had been transformed to look like his people. They spoke his language without accent, moved with the right body language, even ate traditional Velthari foods without showing disgust. When they were ready, we sent them back to your people, Do-hyun continued, but not as infiltrators, as refugees. The wall showed small ships approaching the Velthari home fleet. They were damaged vessels, sending distress signals, claiming to be survivors from human attacks on outer colonies. The fleet's commanders had no reason to doubt the stories. The refugees looked like Velthari, spoke like Velthari, and knew details about colonies that had actually been destroyed. Your people welcomed them aboard, Taemin observed, fed them, gave them quarters, treated them as honored survivors of human brutality. But the refugees had not come to find safety. They had come to plant seeds of doubt and suspicion throughout the Velthari fleet. At first, they did nothing obvious. They just lived among the crews, making friends, gaining trust, learning the specific dynamics of each ship. Then the whispers started, Hyejin said. The recordings showed the false refugees having quiet conversations with real Velthari. They would mention seeing someone acting strangely, or finding equipment that had been tampered with, or noticing that certain crew members didn't quite sound like they came from the regions they claimed. We used your own cultural values against you, Do-hyun explained. Velthari society is built on honor and trust between warriors, but it's also built on suspicion of outsiders and fear of weakness. We turned those two instincts against each other. Kithvar watched his people slowly turning on one another. The refugees would make subtle suggestions that certain crew members might be human infiltrators. They would point out small differences in behavior or speech patterns. They would remind everyone of the stories from Kepler Station about humans who could perfectly mimic Velthari appearance and behavior. Your commanders started ordering loyalty tests, Hyejin said. Genetic scans, memory probes, psychological evaluations. But the more they tested, the more suspicious everyone became. The wall showed chaos spreading through the Velthari fleet. Crew members were being arrested on suspicion of being human spies. Friends were reporting friends to security officers. Ships were requesting permission to detach from the main fleet because they no longer trusted the other vessels. The beautiful thing about paranoia, Taemin said, is that it feeds on itself. The more your people looked for infiltrators, the more they found reasons to suspect each other. But that was not the worst part. The wall showed new recordings, these from inside the command ship of the Velthari fleet. Kithvar recognized Admiral Zekvar, the highest military commander in the Empire. He was screaming at his officers, demanding to know who could be trusted. Your admiral ordered a complete purge of the fleet, Do-hyun said. Anyone who showed signs of suspicious behavior was to be interrogated, tested, and if necessary, eliminated. The recordings showed Velthari warriors fighting each other in the corridors of their own ships. Security teams were arresting officers who had served loyally for decades. Medical officers were running genetic tests on everyone, looking for signs of human infiltration that didn't exist. In 2 weeks, your home fleet destroyed itself, Hyejin said quietly. Over 300 ships were lost to internal fighting. Thousands of your best warriors killed by their own comrades, all because they were looking for enemies that were never there. Kithvar felt his world collapsing. The mighty Velthari Empire, conquerors of star systems, had been defeated by a dozen human actors who had done nothing but tell lies and plant doubts. But Admiral Jae-hyun wasn't finished. Do-hyun added. A new face appeared on the wall, an older human woman with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. She wore the uniform of a high-ranking officer, with more decorations than Kithvar had ever seen on a human. The Admiral had been studying your reports from the home fleet, Yijin explained. She realized that your people were so desperate to find human infiltrators that they had forgotten to look for real threats. The wall showed human ships approaching the Velthari home system. They were not the large battle fleets that Kithvar expected. Instead, they were small groups of vessels moving carefully and quietly through space. While your fleet was busy fighting itself, we walked into your home system, Taemin said. Your sensors were looking for massive attacks, for obvious invasions. They weren't prepared for enemies who had learned to think like Velthari strategic planners. The recordings showed human ships using captured Velthari identification codes and communication protocols. They moved in formations that looked like routine patrol groups or supply convoys. The paranoid home fleet was so focused on internal threats that they barely noticed external ones. By the time your people realized what was happening, we had ships positioned around every major world in your system, Do-hyun said. Not to attack them, but to broadcast a simple message. The wall displayed text in perfect Velthari script. The message was short but devastating. Your fleet has been infiltrated. Your commanders cannot be trusted. Surrender now or we will reveal which of your officers are human agents. But there were no human agents, Kithvar whispered. No, Yijin agreed. But your people didn't know that. And after weeks of paranoia and internal fighting, they were ready to believe anything. The recordings showed the final collapse of the Velthari home fleet. Ships were surrendering one by one, their crews convinced that they were the only loyal Velthari left in a fleet full of human infiltrators. Within hours, the greatest military force in Velthari history had simply given up without firing a shot at the real enemy. We didn't conquer your home system, Do-hyun said. We convinced it to conquer itself. Kithvar stared at the wall, trying to process what he had seen. His people had been defeated not by superior weapons or tactics, but by their own fears and suspicions turned against them. What kind of creatures are you? He asked, his voice barely audible. The three humans looked at him with expressions that might have been pity. The door to the interrogation room opened and a new human entered. She was tall and thin, with short gray hair and clothes that marked her as someone important. Her eyes were the coldest thing Kithvar had ever seen, like looking into the empty space between stars. This is Chief Strategist Minseo, Do-hyun said as the woman took a seat at the table. She designed the final phase of our war against your people. Minseo opened a small device and placed it on the table. The wall behind her filled with images of space battles, but these were different from the ones Kithvar had seen before. These showed recent fights where Velthari forces were not just losing, but running away without even attempting to fight. Tell me, Commander, Minseo said, her voice quiet but somehow terrifying. What do you think war is really about? Kithvar tried to sit straighter in his energy shackles. War is about strength. The strong conquer the weak. The superior species dominates the inferior ones. Minseo smiled, and Kithvar wished she hadn't. That's what your people believe, yes. But you're wrong. War isn't about strength or superiority. War is about will, the determination to keep fighting no matter what the cost. The wall showed more battle recordings. Kithvar watched Velthari fleets encountering human forces and immediately retreating, sometimes without even trying to engage. His proud warrior race was running from fights they could probably win. Your people have lost the will to fight us, Heejin explained, not because they can't win, but because they're afraid of what we might do to them if they try. The images changed to show prison camps and refugee centers throughout Velthari space. Thousands of alien warriors were surrendering themselves to human forces, begging to be taken as prisoners rather than face human tactics in battle. We didn't just defeat your military, Minseo continued. We broke your entire species' confidence. Every battle we've fought, every strategy we've used, every psychological operation we've conducted, all of it was designed to teach your people one simple lesson. What lesson? Kithvar asked, though he was afraid to know. That humans are not prey, Taemin answered. The wall displayed communications intercepts from throughout Velthari space. Ship captains were requesting transfers to non-combat duties. Entire fleets were refusing orders to engage human forces. Planetary governors were negotiating surrender terms before human ships even appeared in their systems. The stories spread faster than our actual military advances, Do-hyun said. Tales of humans who could become Velthari, who could turn your own weapons and tactics against you, who could make entire fleets destroy themselves without firing a shot. Minseo touched her device, and the wall showed star charts with human territory marked in blue and Velthari territory in red. But the red areas were shrinking rapidly, not because of military conquest, but because Velthari worlds were choosing to surrender or simply abandon their systems. Fear is more powerful than plasma cannons, she observed. A reputation for ruthlessness is more valuable than 1,000 battleships. Your people taught us that in the early years of the war, when you used terror as a weapon against our colonies. Kithavar remembered those early victories, when Velthari forces would broadcast images of destroyed human settlements to convince other colonies to surrender without fighting. It had been an effective strategy. Now we've turned that same weapon against you, Heejin said, but we've perfected it, made it more efficient, more targeted, more devastating. The door opened again and another human entered. This one wore a communications uniform and looked excited about something. Her name tag read Hyo-jin. Chief Strategist, Hyo-jin said, "We're receiving surrender offers from the Outer Rim sectors. 3 entire star systems want to negotiate terms before we even reach their space." Minseo nodded calmly. "Accept their surrenders. Standard terms: disarmament, occupation, integration into human administrative systems." Kithvar stared at the communication officer. 3 star systems? How many ships did you send? None, Minseo replied. We didn't need to. The reputation of human military capabilities is doing our work for us. The wall showed more intelligence reports. Velthari colonies throughout the galaxy were choosing submission over resistance. Some were even requesting human protection from other Velthari forces that might still be loyal to the old empire. Your species is surrendering to an enemy they haven't even seen, Do-hyun said. They're so afraid of what humans might do that they're giving up their freedom to avoid finding out. But Kithvar was beginning to understand something that chilled him more than the cold interrogation room. This was your plan from the beginning, wasn't it? Not just to win the war, but to break us completely. Minseo's cold smile returned. Very good, Commander. Yes, that was always the goal. We realized early on that simply defeating your military wouldn't be enough. Your people would just rebuild their fleets and attack again in a few years. We needed to make sure that would never happen. The wall displayed human strategic documents dating back to the early years of the war. Kithvar saw plans and projections that showed human leaders had been thinking far beyond simple military victory from the very beginning. We studied the psychology of entire species, Minseo explained. Not just individual Velthari, but your whole civilization. Your cultural values, your historical patterns, your collective fears and desires. We learned how to reshape your society's fundamental beliefs about itself. The images showed human research teams analyzing every aspect of Velthari culture. They had been preparing for a war that wasn't just about territory or resources, but about transforming the very nature of both species involved in the conflict. The war changed us too, Heejin said quietly. We learned things about ourselves that we never knew before. Capabilities we didn't realize we had. Kithvar looked at the 3 humans sitting across from him. They seemed so calm, so controlled, so different from the chaotic mammals his people had first encountered. The war had indeed changed them, but into what? What are you now? He asked. Minseo stood up and walked to the wall display. She touched the screen, and it showed a map of the galaxy with human territory spreading like a slow infection across thousands of star systems. We're what we needed to become to survive, she said. Your people forced us to evolve, to adapt, to become something stronger and more ruthless than we ever thought possible. The display showed human fleets moving through space, but they weren't conquering worlds through military force. Instead, they were arriving at planets that had already surrendered, taking control of civilizations that had given up before the first shot was fired. We've learned that the most efficient way to win a war is to convince your enemy that fighting is hopeless, Minseo continued. Not just this battle or this campaign, but any future conflict as well. Kithvar realized the full scope of what humans had accomplished. They had not just defeated the Velthari Empire, they had convinced an entire species that humans were unbeatable. Even if the Velthari rebuilt their military in decades to come, the psychological scars would remain. The fear would be passed down to future generations. Your children will grow up knowing that humans can become anything, defeat anyone, turn any strength into weakness, Do-hyun said. They will never again see your species as the natural rulers of the galaxy. The wall showed projections of future human expansion, not through conquest, but through voluntary submission by alien species who had heard the stories of what happened to those who resisted. Other species are already sending ambassadors, Hyojin reported. The Krill Republic, the Novan Collective, even the Eternal Hierarchy. They all want to negotiate peaceful relationships with humanity. Minseo nodded. Good. Fear of human capabilities is spreading beyond just the Velthari. Soon the entire galaxy will understand that cooperation with humanity is preferable to conflict. Kithvar felt something break inside his chest. His people had started this war believing they were the apex predators of the galaxy. They had awakened something in humanity that was far more dangerous than any weapon or technology. You're releasing me, he said suddenly, though he wasn't sure how he knew. Of course, Minseo replied. You're going to return to what's left of your people and tell them exactly what you've seen here today. You're going to describe human capabilities in perfect detail. You're going to make sure every Velthari understands exactly what they're dealing with. The energy shackles around Kithvar's wrists deactivated. He rubbed his scaled skin where they had held him, but he made no move to attack or escape. What would be the point? The war is over, Do-hyun said as he stood up. Not because we destroyed your fleets or conquered your worlds, but because we convinced your entire species that continuing to fight would be suicide. Minseo walked to the door, then paused and looked back at Kithvar. Your people called us weak mammals when this started. They were wrong. We're not weak and we're not the same species we were 3 years ago. What are you then? Kithvar asked one final time. The chief strategist's cold eyes showed something that might have been sadness or regret, or perhaps just exhaustion. We're what you made us, she said. The question is whether we can remember what we used to be. The door closed behind the humans, leaving Kithvar alone in the White Room. Soon he knew they would give him a ship and send him back to his people,